Hi, everyone. I'm Tanys.
And I'm Jenn.
And this is Twillow Talk, where we talk about spiritual topics in an authentic way.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and this is Rob's. She just keeps climbing on my lap. So you may see her coming and going tonight. She's I don't know.
she's our little mascot for
tonight.
the evening. She's clingy today. She's feeling like she wants some energy, so she's joining us.
Yeah. Of course, as soon as I introduce her, she runs away.
Of course. She's shy.
Camera shy.
Awesome. All right. So here, what we usually do is we pick a card, and we use these ones here: Diana Cooper and Greg Stewart, the wisdom cards. So these have like topics on them and a little paragraph. So what Jen and I usually do is we just pick a card and then we have a chat about it. Are we ready, Jen? Ready to see what card? So we're actually going to shuffle them on screen and see what comes out. All jumping around today. So, there we go. Oh, health and well-being.
Oh.
Science has demonstrated that positive thoughts impact at a cellular level on the body and that meditation improves health. Because your physical self is a reflection of your inner, you have the power to change everything simply by energizing, life-enhancing, joyous thoughts and beliefs. Beliefs that your life may alter and reflect them. Wisdom reminds you that a happy, positive, relaxed person is a healthy one. So nourish your emotional, mental, and spiritual self. This is essential to your health and well-being as good nutrition and exercise are. So the affirmation for today, I choose life-affirming food, thoughts, and actions. So it is health and well-being is our topic. So what comes to mind? Anything come to mind for you, Jen?
Yeah, well, I know that this is often a kind of almost sometimes controversial issue when it comes to the spiritual perspective, right? Because some people very much are in the physical and in the body and feel very connected. And then some people very much believe that we are spiritual and we are not this physical body. We have a physical body. And so we have a lot more power over the physical body. And so I think that a big piece in this is wherever we are on our journey, whatever our belief system is, that we approach it authentically.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So if we really believe that we are very connected to this body and that, we have to follow, what is taught about the physical and all, that we honor that within ourselves. And if we really believe that we are spiritual beings and that we can impact the body and that we don't necessarily have to abide by what the rules of the world are, that we honor that in the best way that serves and respects and cares for our vessel in however we view it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and for me, I think the health and well-being is a three-pronged approach. That's my view on it anyway, is, we've got the physical, we've got the mental, emotional, and then we've got the energetic or the spiritual. And so I kind of think there has to be work on all three layers in order to be truly healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And some of us are more strong on other layers, which is totally fine. And sometimes that can help balance things out a bit, but, I always look at with my clients, I'm always saying, if you're coming to me with something, some kind of issue or something, then, we have to look at it at a three-prong approach. So I'm not one that's going to say, don't go to a psychologist or don't go to your doctor about this. For me, you need to go to all three of those people if you've got something going on with you, to make sure that you're covering all your bases, kind of thing, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And they all, like those Gantt charts, the ones with the three circles and they all overlap in the center, and that's like your ideal. I mean, we sort of move around a little bit, I think, on where our strengths are at various times in our lives, but if we can find that sweet spot in the middle.
Well, and we talk about mind, body, and spirit, right? And I think sorry, I'm just shutting the door. We talk about, well, in this with the body piece and bringing it up specifically because it was talking about, our health and things like that, and being able to, the physical health, right? And now, even the talk of meditation, and meditation helps us, it helps our mental health, it helps our physical health, and of course, it helps us in our spiritual path, whatever that journey looks like for us. But I think that this mind, body, spirit, I mean, it's something that we have in pretty much all of our practices, for all of us who, who really want to bring that, component, like you were saying, of all three aspects together as one. Um, and I mean, in the counseling side of things and the mental health side of things, they're even really seeing now like the somatic stuff, right? And how the body very much does impact the mental health, and they do feed off of each other. And if we really want to help with the mental health, we have to stop some of the natural physical reactions that the body holds, in order to be able to be in a place where we can deal with things from a mental health perspective, right? And then, of course, being able to become the observer and really work on all of that is going to very much impact our spiritual well-being, right? And our spiritual well-being as we grow is going to impact those. So they're all interconnected.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, when you look at when we talk about the energy and the vibration of things, and it being connected, the vibration, like everything is vibration. So, our physical well-being is when we're in a specific vibrational range, right? Most of most healthy adults vibrate, between like 63 and 75 megahertz, for instance, right? And then when we have a negative thought, it brings it down by 12. When we have a positive one, it brings it up by 10, right? And so meditation, like you were saying, actually brings that up by 25. And so they're starting to bring this in and look at how that stuff affects the vibration, which is our overall well-being, right? Because when we go below, like down into the 50s, that's when we start feeling burnt out and all of that stuff. And, lower, you get into more serious potential down there. But that's also about the emotional, because they talk about emotions being vibration as well. And how like fear is the lowest vibration emotion, and like love and joy are the highest vibration emotions. And so it is all connected in the sense, and spirituality is often spirituality and energy, they often get tossed about as being in the same category, we'll say. I think there are different aspects to both, but I think in a lot of our modern talk, we talk about them in many ways interchangeably, depending on where people's comfort zone is and that sort of thing, right? Because there is such a close connection.
I think when we start to understand energy, it brings us a little bit closer to spiritual.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas if we're not quite at a point of wanting to deal with the spiritual, we can deal with that energy piece, because it is kind of that connection between the physical and the spiritual and bringing us through that. Reminded of Emoto. What is his first name?
Oh yeah, Masaru Emoto, the water study.
Yeah. And just that idea again of like the different vibrations, right? And how if we, the with the water experiment, what he did was, things that were polluted versus things that were purified, things that had certain kinds of music played to them, both really harsh music and classical, wonderful music that's uplifting and high vibration, and, words of affirmation and love, and words of, disrespect and hate, and how, when we bring that darkness in, it actually turned the water molecules dark. But when we brought the light and the love and uplifting things in, they made beautiful beautiful images, right? And
that we're full of sacred geometry too, right?
yeah,
Which is like building blocks of life. So
exactly.
yeah, for sure. What I think what we'll do is we'll link his page,
Mhm.
Matsurimoto's page, to the bottom of this video so people can take a look at that, because it really was a big, like a monumental study in the effect of consciousness or words or thoughts or prayers on water, and with that, when you can affect water like that, I mean, we're 75 to 85% water, depending on who you are. So that's a lot of our well-being, really, right? That it affects the physical well-being, our vibrational well-being, emotional well-being.
Yeah. And so just those thoughts, the words, that just the things that you're around in your environment, all of that, when we're thinking about health and well-being, I mean, all of that plays into it. It's not just, our own day to day, what we're doing, but it's not just, going out for fries and a burger.
Yeah,
It's really about,
exactly. It's not just what we put in our mouths, right?
yeah, exactly. It's really about not like what we put in emotionally, what we put in, by what we allow ourselves to perceive and how we choose to perceive things, and then what we put
Mhm.
back out by what we process, our thoughts, our patterns. All of that plays such a huge role in how we're going to feel, right? I mean, we talk about heaviness, right? And we talk about often like this heaviness in the world, especially right now with everything that's going on.
Yeah.
And there is this heaviness. And today, even earlier, we were talking, and it was like there's a sticky heaviness today. It's
Yeah.
different, a
Yeah.
different feeling in what's going on in the world. And and that's where, we can recognize it and say, okay, but that's not going to come in, right? I'm going to hold that light. I'm going to send that light, your message to me, sending light and love. Like it's such a powerful thing. And it doesn't have to be, taking on the world, but just being there for those that, we're close to, just sending a bit of love when we can, sending it to ourselves when
That
we need.
too. Yeah.
Um, and even when we don't realize we need it, right?
Yes. And that's where it's helpful for other people to do it too, right? Because you may recognize it, or somebody else might recognize it about you, and you
Mhm.
don't necessarily realize that you're having a rough day, but somebody's looking at you going, what's
Yeah.
going on with you? That happened to me today, actually. I was on a call and I was really distracted with something that was going on, and the person called me up afterwards and he's like, are you okay? I'm like, yes, I'm okay. It's like, okay, I wanted to make sure, which was great. I mean, I really appreciate that, because it certainly shows they care. And but that's the kind of thing we don't always realize it, if we're busy with this 3D world, we don't always realize kind of what our energy is doing. And so it's I mean, that's part of the practice, part of the journey, right? Is to step back and be that quiet observer of ourselves.
Mhm.
Because it's one thing to be the quiet observer in our environment and what's happening around us, and trying, doing our best not to let ourselves get triggered with what's going on around us, but also being the quiet observer as to what's going on in here.
Well, and the only way to not be triggered by what's going on around us is to be the inner observer,
Yeah,
right?
that's right.
We can understand the dynamics of what's happening and what other people are doing and stuff, but ultimately, as we know, only our own reactions, our own thoughts, our own feelings are the only things we have control over. And so being that inner observer is really the only real like power that we have to change anything in our experience.
Yeah, I mean, if I could cultivate one thing in everybody, if I have my choice, I could cultivate one thing, right? It would be that self-reflection.
Yeah.
You know, I think there's a piece that people that don't implement that kind of self-reflection, and trying to be as authentic about self-reflection as you can be, you know. It's not always easy because we're fragile, we're humans, you know, our feelings get hurt even by ourselves. You know, crap, I shouldn't have done that.
I
What
hurt
did
my
I do that for? You know. And then we're like, well, what do you mean when it is? It's that self-talk, right? The self-talk. You can be somehow it's easier to be mean to ourselves than it is to somebody else. Right? And that's where that self-reflection is a gift that you can give to yourself, because when you start to do that, you're like, oh, wait a minute. And just asking yourself, would you treat your friend that way? Not. Why am I treating myself this way? You know.
So true. It's so true. And really, when, like the card talked about meditation, and really that's what meditation is about, right? Like a lot of people think meditation is about, being completely empty and not being able to, like to have complete control over all of your thoughts and have a blank mind. And yes, an aspect of it is to be able to come to that kind of void and being able to really hear. But ultimately, it's really about being able to observe what's going on inside of ourselves at any given moment. Right? And taking that with us, right? That present moment awareness isn't just about stopping to smell the roses, even though that is an aspect of it, but it's really about what is going on inside of me in this moment. What is going on that makes me remember to stop and smell the roses? What is going on inside of me that makes me forget to stop and smell the roses? Why do I take the time to observe this and not take the time to observe that?
Yeah.
Right? And really bringing it back and looking at all of it, the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? And we all have all these different parts within ourselves. We talk about, parts therapy, right? And really honoring all of the different parts of us, even the ones that kind of scare us, and those parts that, we want to hide or we want to avoid, but they're all intricate parts of who we are.
Yeah.
And we have to be able to observe and understand and recognize what they're trying to tell us.
That's where that shadow work comes in, right? And if you think about the fact that when oftentimes we go down that shadow work road, and it's like you get caught up in the negative piece of it, and it's really like it can be such a spiral in that if you start down that without like some guidance, right? Or at least a good friend that can say, what are you doing? No. That's no. Yeah, if you can just try to be kind to yourself on that, and forgiving yourself is so huge. I mean, I talk a lot about the Ho'oponopono, and when I talk about doing it in the mirror, it actually scares people to try and do it in the mirror. I often will get people to do it in the mirror in a session, because I want to get them started on it, because I know how we will want to avoid it if we haven't already started that work, right? And I had one client who was just took one look at herself, and she's like, outright, I'm not doing this. And I was like, okay. And so it really, I mean, it showed me where she was at and what the work was that we had to work through. But I find for myself, when I was doing it in the mirror, like when I first started my journey and I started doing that in the mirror, and it was like, I mean, I cried the first 2-3 times I did it, because I was just like, oh my God, this is like so hard. But I cannot tell you how rewarding it was. The first day I was looking in the mirror and I'm washing my hands, and I'm like, I kind of like you. And I went, wait a minute, was that me? That was me. I said that about me. I was like, okay. I mean, it sounds really egotistical right now, but it was really very much about that acceptance piece.
Yeah. Well, and I think that you hit on a really important part too, when you were talking about the self-critical, like how we will say things to ourselves or think things about ourselves that we would never say or think about somebody else, especially not somebody else we cared about,
Yeah.
right? We would never put them down and criticize them and tell them, how horrible they are or how much they screwed up. And yet we do it to ourselves
Hmm.
so often,
Yeah.
right? And really learning to catch that and to change that and to love and respect ourselves and say, wow, I don't deserve to be treating myself this way,
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think that, when you get into like the Ho'oponopono and all of that, you're coming to terms with the fact that you've been the monster to yourself.
Hmm.
And and there's so much that can come up with that, right? Between the shame and the guilt of being that monster, but also all of the parts of us that don't feel valuable, right? And that are so used to being talked down to, right? And all of those parts kind of being like, no, 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 it's okay. You don't have to apologize. No, 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 it's okay. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that those there's so much that comes up, right? And in
Hmm.
our child work and things like that, when we actually tell ourselves, hey, I love you, and mean it,
Hmm.
and just the shattering that can happen in that moment is so powerful. When we talk about health and well-being, whoa,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. It's huge, huge steps forward, right? I know I also tend to include you are worthy and you are enough when I give people that to do in the mirror, because there's often a big sort of heaviness around being worthy, worthy of love, worthy of self-love, worthy of appreciation from others, or like receiving anything. So that, and that you don't feel you're enough, that whole what's it called, imposterism.
Yeah,
So many people sit in that like imposterism
yeah.
place, you know.
Yeah, well, and the imposter syndrome, imposterism, like all of that lack of worth. I mean, when I do Enneagram work with people, it's about the lies, really, that we tell ourselves and how we defend against hurt in ways that continue to hurt us,
Mm-hmm.
right? And a big part of that is like, I'm only worthy or I'm only valuable if, right? And then there are all the different lies that we've come to believe, right? I'm only valuable if I'm giving of myself. I'm only valuable if I can prove that I'm good enough. I'm only valuable if, and it's those lies that bring out the imposter syndrome that make us feel like we're not worthy because okay, well, I'm worthy this time because I did this. But what about next time? Next time I'm not going to measure up. I can't do that again. Right. And then we overextend ourselves and we end up in burnout and we end up in breakdowns and all of that kind of stuff because we feel like our value is coming from something that we're putting out, as opposed to understanding that intrinsic value that comes from just being.
Yeah.
Just the fact that we are makes us very, very valuable, right? Just the fact that you are you, that you are here, you are valuable
Yeah.
beyond measure.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's definitely something that I think as a collective we're not great at seeing in ourselves.
Mhm.
It's our value,
Yeah.
for
Well,
sure.
I mean, we live in a society that prides itself on being too busy
Mm-hmm.
to live, too busy to stop.
Mm-hmm.
If you're, going and pushing yourself beyond your limits, well, then you're good, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm
But
hoping that that's changing a little bit,
I think
but
it is.
that people don't see it that way. I think some of the big, Richard Branson's and them in the world, that they're starting to make some progress in that regard. You're seeing that they can have their like playtime or their downtime and
Yeah.
still run multi-million-dollar companies, I think that it's going to take a little bit of filtering down over the next decade or so, before that sort of is able to come down to, when I say filtering down, I just mean in terms of business hierarchy. You know, so many businesses, you think that, oh, the top dogs, they don't do anything. It's always the underlings that do it. And I don't think of business that way. Like, you're all together. Everybody has a really important role. I'm speaking more about sort of perceptions than how I look at it. In fact, many of my, like, I'm an HR consultant as well. So many of my clients, I've actually, when we work on things like an org chart or something, I actually do it reversed org chart, you know, because visually it puts the importance on the whole. Like, it's a tree, right? You've got your anyway, I'm getting off topic, but the trunk is like the organization, and then it goes out to the branches, and your clients are your leaves and stuff, and you need to have the roots in the earth for all of that to grow. So everybody is connected and everybody has to work together. Everybody has an intricate part of that whole system kind of thing. So that's more of a systems thinking.
Yeah.
But anyway, I don't know, I'm way off topic. Pull me back, Jen, please.
It's interesting though, because again, like, it's that systems piece, and yes, we are all part of a system, and we all do have a role to play in this world. But I think that it's really important that we understand that no matter what we've put in to that system, no matter what we've contributed or whatever we have not been able to contribute, it doesn't change our value. And I think
Exactly.
that is the biggest part in all of it.
Yeah.
Is, you know what, like, some days I can give her 10 out of 10, and some days I'm barely pushing 0, right? Like, it's but that doesn't change my value
As a
as a,
person, right?
and that's the
As a
big,
being.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something that still needs to come to an understanding in
Mhm.
the world, right? I think that that's something that's still not embraced. We very much are a cause and effect world. And even though there is cause and effect in many ways, when it comes to our value and who we are as a being,
Yeah. Yeah, it's not
it
about
doesn't abide by the same rules.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Right? We talk about health and wellness, like bringing it back to that, right? The more we can get away from some of these conditioned beliefs that we've learned just from being born here.
Mhm.
Um, and the more we can get back to the truth of who we are on a deep level, that true, 3-part body, mind, spirit, like who
Yeah.
we really are in our being, in our essence, we realize that, you know what? It doesn't follow these rules.
Yeah.
It's not, you know, it's
Yeah.
not as limited as we, think things to be. I apologize for the banging in the background. I have kids.
It's COVID. We're all like at home. So, we have families and stuff happening. Life
I
is happening
can't,
on
like
beyond the camera,
a lost squirrel. No, wait, it's okay.
No worries. So you were you mentioned, you brought up like that programming and and that brings with it expectation, right? From external as well as internal. And there's two words that have come up tonight that stuck out for me. And that's if, only if, and should sticks out for me. Those two words can be so dangerous with the self-talk, and with projection, from other people, with their programming. And it's not like, it's just their programming. It's not that they're implicitly, or like, they're not explicitly trying to control you. It's their programming, and they feel they need to share that. And that's where that, well, you should be doing this, or you should be doing that, those shoulds. It's a dangerous word.
It
Yeah.
is.
It comes with all sorts of
Very dangerous word. If I can use it, we should take should out of our
You would be advised to.
vocabulary.
Same thing, different word.
Different word. And it's interesting too, because like from the psychological background, right? When you think of like relational frame theory, this idea of how, language, right? Like language is so arbitrary in so many ways, right? If I were to start speaking in another language that you didn't understand, whatever I'm saying has no real meaning to you.
Right.
But because we have put meaning on certain words, we tend now to not only adhere to those meanings, but then we make these associations between different things. And we're like, well, that's law.
Yeah.
Well, no, no, not really. And when they teach about like relational frame theory, one of the things that they do is like they make a list of a whole bunch of words. And then on the other side, they make a list of a whole bunch of words. And then they like kind of pull out random words. And the reality is, if they give you two completely random words, your brain will associate them
It's
in
interesting, right?
some way.
Yeah.
It will find something in your filing system and it will pull them out and it will associate them. And
Mhm.
so I think that that is such an important thing for us to understand, right? The mind will make up a reason. It will make up a story. It will figure out how to connect something. So we have a feeling and we will come up with a thought to explain that feeling. We just do because we are so connected,
Mhm.
right? And it is important for us to understand that these connections are just part of that mechanism. It's part of the mechanics. And just because we can figure out how to make the connection doesn't make it real, doesn't make it truth,
Right.
right? It doesn't make it legitimately something that we have to focus on. And so, again, when we come back to health and wellness and we go back to observer,
Mhm.
right? Getting rid of those ifs, getting rid of those shoulds, getting rid of those connections and those patterned connections that we're so used to making. But we can only do that by taking that time, meditating, becoming the observer,
Mhm.
really, you know, paying attention to our inner processes and how they respond to the outer experiences. It's such an intricate piece of wellness that
Yeah.
you can, you know, work out and eat well and, read a gazillion different things. But if you're not taking that time to really understand yourself, that wellness is going to elude you.
Mhm. Well, and one way to do that, is start getting in tune with what's going on with you is the self-reflection piece, right?
Mhm.
And so, I encourage people to kind of sit back and go, okay, right now, what does my body need? Does it need water? Does it need a walk? Does it need, what does my body need? Relaxation, a massage? Like, what do I need? And then go to, okay, so what does my mind need? Does it need to be quiet? Does it need stimulation? Do I need to, watch something interesting that makes it think? Do I need to not do that? Where am I at? What am I thinking? And then, of course, the spiritual. What does my spirit need right now? Does it need peace? Does it need support and company? Does it need meditation? There's all sorts of things that your body craves and your mind craves and your spirit craves. So asking yourself what it is right now in this moment, what do I need?
Yeah.
And that's I think that's a big part of the health and wellness piece, is tuning into what we need in that time. And it changes moment to moment, right? But
Yeah. And I think there's also an awareness piece to what I need versus what I want.
yes.
And I think that that's also something that we really need to be mindful of and aware of. Because I think way too often we have wants or desires that are not necessarily needs. And, I mean, there's all these sayings about being careful what you ask for, because not everything that we want is good for us, and not everything that we desire is really what is in our best interest.
Mhm.
And so I think that there is an observing piece that needs to be had there as well, when we're looking at it. Okay, what do I need versus, what do I want? Um, and how, and sometimes they are in line, right?
Mhm.
But sometimes they're not. And so there's a discernment there.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, like, you know, I really want this cookie. Does my body need a cookie? No, my body does not need a cookie, but it really wants a cookie, in basic terms. So the discernment between, okay, so if I have this cookie because I want this cookie, how's that going to affect the need piece? That's kind of what we're talking about, right? When you're talking about discernment, you're talking about how do we discern which is good and which is not, right? Making those decisions.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? Like sometimes we need to have a cookie.
Yeah, because maybe it's for the emotional piece rather than, not that we want to encourage any
Not that we want to eat cookies for our
we don't want
emotions.
to emotionally eat. However,
But again, right, when we talk about, wants versus needs, like there is that component for sure. But I think that we also live in a world of everything really quick, everything right at our fingertips, access to whatever we want, pretty much whenever we want. And I think that oftentimes that instant gratification is so used to being met that and I know this is something like I've learned from my own self-observation, because I can say I know that there was a time where those wants and needs were not discerned,
Mhm.
right? And there was a time where, it was like, well, I need this to happen right now. Well, no, I want this to happen right now. But actually, in this moment, I'm fine, whether this happens or not,
Yeah.
right? And it really takes that stepping back from this like ego self that's like, no, 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 I have to have it now,
Yes.
to to go,
Yeah.
wait, no, actually, my being is just fine. And I don't need to have something a certain way in order to be fine.
Mhm. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, I mean, the whole health and well-being thing, it's, we think health and we think physical, really, I mean, there is a lot coming up now about mental health as well. Spiritual health is another component to that. And then well-being to me is almost like the overall term with that, right? Including all of those things.
When you think about it, well-being. Yeah,
Whole being,
yeah, whole being.
the holistic approach, right? Looking at everything.
Yeah. And
Awesome.
a big part of, of well-being is being, right? And I think that oftentimes too there is this very high component on doing
Yeah.
and doing and doing and going and going and going and having and having and having and seeing, right? And it's all this thing where being and allowing ourselves to be and to pause and to experience the pause
Yeah.
is huge for our spiritual and overall well-being.
Well, and that's kind of what we're doing with meditation, right?
Mhm.
It's just being.
Yeah.
You're teaching yourself to just be.
Mhm.
Just like when you go for a walk in nature and you're just going to be in nature,
Mhm.
and tuning into your senses. What do you feel? What do you smell? What do you see? What's it like?
Mhm.
That's a great way to start into the sort of tuning in.
Yeah.
So, well, that's great. And I think that pretty much sums our stuff up there for health and well-being. So it's been a great conversation. and looking forward to many more. And do you have anything coming up that you'd like to share? Or I know we have some classes coming up with the Twillow Lifestyle Academy. So, and I know you're going to be helping out with some of those. So that's exciting. So yeah, so stay tuned.
Okay.
Lots to come.
Good.
And thank you all for watching, and don't forget to subscribe. Bye now.
Thank you. Bye.